Hello and welcome to another episode of Intune.training, the place to learn how to use Microsoft Intune, the Stephen Adams Show, with Jake, obviously, and special guest, Ravi Kalwan. Hello, Ravi. Thanks for joining us.
No problem. Glad to be here.
So Ravi, as I do with our guests these days, tell us who you are, and then Steve will kind of tell us what we're going to be doing today.
Okay, cool. So my name is Ravi Kalwan. I'm based in Sydney, Australia. I've been working with ConfigMgr for a long time. I started working with ConfigMgr when it was not ConfigMgr, it was SMS, SMS 3.0. Yes, exactly.
A fellow SMS fan.
Yeah. it's used to be called slow-moving software as well, Jake.
Yeah. Or Hermes.
Okay. Yeah. So yeah, I've actually helped customers go from SMS 3.0 to Service Pack 1, from Service Pack 1 to SCCM 2007. So yeah, the point is I've been working with the management technology for a long time. And now for probably 3.5 years, I've just been concentrating on Intune, cloud part of it, and also ConfigMgr.
Intune.
Yeah. Now, I should be calling Endpoint Manager.
That's okay. It goes with our brand. It's Intune training. It's all good.
That's right.
Okay.
Yeah.
And that's how we've got the link between ConfigMgr and Intune, because today we're going to be talking about linking your on-prem resources being ConfigMgr to your Intune environment with co-management, cloud attach, and a whole heap of other things that Ravi will go into and explain better than I will.
Yeah. And I'll just call out for the viewers, you may, if you haven't already, or we have a video called The Big Three that we did with Danny Guillory related to co-management, tenant attach, and cloud management gateway. And it was just a discussion around these items. And so the topic today with Ravi is we're going to cover co-management in one technical deep dive video, and then we'll do another. So stay tuned for the second, where we'll talk about tenant attach. So
make sure you subscribe so you can see the second one.
Yes. And with that, Ravi, take it away.
Cool. Okay. So I'm going to start presenting. So it's actually probably not usual here at Intune Training, but I'm going to be presenting a deck. Yes, I would have a lot of live demos as well. I will actually be logging into my ConfigMgr tenant as well.
Awesome.
So there would be a lot of live things as well, not just dead by PowerPoint. But
I'm just happy that we're going to be doing a lab environment for ConfigMgr, and we're not going to try and spin it up on the fly like we normally would with Intune. It might end up being like a 2-day video if we were to do that.
Yes.
Yes.
Nope.
Yes.
Forgot to set that up. All right, stop recording. Try again.
Okay, cool. So let me present my screen. Hope it comes up okay. Adam, I suppose
yes,
you can see it. All right,
looks
cool.
great.
Right. So we're going to talk about attaching your ConfigMgr environment to cloud, and there are two parts of it that I'm going to be talking about. We're going to start with, in today's session, we're just going to talk about co-management, which we also call it client attached to co-management, and then there would be another one that is tenant attached. So we're going to be taking the entire cloud attach part of it into two parts. One would be co-management through client attach, and another would be tenant attach. And we're going to start with the co-management piece today. Let's jump directly into it. Okay, so the slides that I'm showing are not the one I've created from start to end. A lot of these slides have been presented by Microsoft in various sessions, but I do want to make sure that we bring this up to ensure that everybody is aware of the basic concepts. And these animations, I really like it because they present the concept very nicely. So again, the first thing that I want to talk about is ConfigMgr and Intune. As Microsoft says, they are part of the same solution, that is Microsoft Endpoint Manager. And a lot of times where you would read in the Microsoft licensing docs as well, that the CAL licenses have been consolidated as well. So for a lot of organizations, if they do have ConfigMgr CAL license or Intune CAL license, they are allowed to use on-prem or cloud solutions. So it's Endpoint Manager CAL license, and you can use solutions that would work for you. And in a lot of cases, what they also recommend is you use both the solutions, ConfigMgr as well as Intune, and this is what we're going to talk about. This just tells you what ConfigMgr is. It manages devices, which is on-prem, and then there is the second part, which is co-management, and then there is cloud native. So what we're going to talk about is, today is the number 2, which is co-management, and at a later time, we're going to talk about the number 1 on the left and top, that is tenant attached. Now, let's drill down a bit more into the 2 scenarios before picking one and going deep dive into it. So there is tenant attached, and there is, which is on the left, which gives you set of capabilities. Tenant attached is something you enable on ConfigMgr and gives you a set of capabilities. Co-management is another and gives you another set of capabilities. And the capabilities are listed in there. So what I want to really highlight here is that the capabilities that you get with tenant attached is completely different than the capabilities that you get with co-management. And that is the reason there should not be a question coming from organizations, should I go co-management or should I go tenant attached? In a lot of cases, the value the organizations are going to get is when they enable both. When they enable co-management, which is on the right-hand side, they get conditional access, which is one of the hero features that Microsoft demonstrate. It also gives you capability of management anywhere because the devices are managed through Intune, and then the modern provisioning, which is very, very popular, which is autopilot. But if you look at the left-hand side, tenant attached gives you capability. Again, we're going to go into drill down into the help desk, which is, I believe, one of my favorite capabilities when it comes to tenant attached. So there is desktop analytics, there is user experience analytics. So these capabilities are coming from tenant attached. Again, so the first thing that I want to highlight for any organization, or even in your tenant, it's not enabling one part or one or the other part of cloud attached. You should enable both the capabilities to get the most out of it.
And just from a I guess my user's perspective, the way that I always classify them is, so tenant attach is a gateway to your on-prem resources or to your on-prem ConfigMgr environment. So it's a web front end to manage ConfigMgr through the cloud. But your devices themselves and even the communication to the devices is actually still occurring on-prem. So it's through a gateway to your ConfigMgr server, which then communicates on behalf of the cloud presence. And where the co-management piece is where you're actually enabling the device to talk directly to Intune for the management components that you enable, so that you can manage that device anywhere. Whereas tenant attached, the device still has to be able to talk directly or talk back to the on-prem infrastructure for it to function. But together, you get this amazing holistic way to be able to, now you have a cloud management component through tenant attached, but then you also have touch any device anywhere through co-management, and so it's even still more better together kind of stuff. So I really like
correct. You very well said. So the 2 points that I would take from what you said is in tenant attached, it's the ConfigMgr speaking with Intune. And when it is co-management, it's the client directly speaking or communicating to Intune. So that's correct. Yeah. So and that's what comes up in my next slide. So I wanted to talk about the overall architecture of it. So if you see at the bottom part, there is co-managed device, and co-managed, the device itself is speaking to Intune. There is a direct management channel from Intune. However, there is also a direct management channel to ConfigMgr. So it's the device itself that is communicating back and forth from the two solutions. However, that's what client attaches or co-management is. However, if you see the tenant attached, we're not talking really about device itself. The architecture of the ConfigMgr stays exactly what it has always been. What you do is you take the ConfigMgr and make it communicate to Intune. Now, Microsoft actually created components in cloud to get this capability of ConfigMgr speaking with Intune. But again, you do not have to do anything on the device to enable tenant attach. But again, like I said, we're going to drill into a lot more details on tenant attach at a later session, later video. But today, I just want to ensure that we can cover as much detail as we can for co-management. So let's jump into the first part, that is co-management. I've talked about what exactly is co-management. I also put in client attach because it's the client that's attaching to Intune. But this is what it is. The message from Microsoft is, if you have legacy device, just go to modern management, Windows 7, go to Windows 10. But if you see the third part, the last three solutions, Active Directory, Defender, and Config Manager, Microsoft does not say to move your current config manager to Intune or cloud, which is Intune, but take your current config manager and attach it to Intune. That's what the message from Microsoft is. And what it also means is Microsoft at numerous occasions have said that the perception of config manager time is not correct.
That's right. It's not going anywhere. For organizations that need it. Is the narrative that I keep hearing as well, which is there is always going to be organizations that need to have config manager. There's going to be organizations that can run Intune by itself, but it comes down to what works best for your organization and taking the time to understand that scenario.
Yeah, co-management is the destination.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, stop that. But the other, I guess the other important piece here is to piggyback on what Steve's saying is, so it's not go and stand up config manager if you are a cloud, company.
Yeah.
This is the, I want to say it's transitional, but it's not necessarily transitional, but so even if you don't ever plan to move your infrastructure fully to the cloud, and you say we're going to have Active Directory forever, and we're going to have on-prem forever, and so, well, great, cool, keep Config Manager around because it adds a ton of extra value that you can then, but then also attach to the cloud because there's a bunch of extra new value added there as well. So the better together, you get best of both worlds. If you're Intune only, you're not going to get some of the features that you get with Config Manager, but you don't need to add Config Manager in your cloud-only environment in order to just get these new features from Config Manager. I mean, you could, but that's not the message as far as I'm aware.
That's correct. Cool. So talking about the architecture, I've already demonstrated it to make it really, really simple. So when a device is completely managed by Intune and has the trust only with Azure Active Directory, then it is cloud managed. With on-prem is traditional AD and Config Manager, but again, in a co-managed scenario where the device is managed by Intune and Config Manager at the same time. Now, I do want to bring a very important topic here, a question that I get asked over and over, that does the device have to be hybrid Azure AD joined? Is the hybrid Azure AD joined co-management, right? So a lot of times I hear while working with customers, they say, oh, we have already done half of the co-management because hybrid Azure AD join is deployed. And I say, that's not true because it is co-management. Like management is the word that we're talking about. It's not the identity piece. So a device may or may not be managed by on-prem AD and Active Directory, Azure Active Directory at the same time. As long as the device has Config Manager agent and is enrolled into Intune, the device would be considered co-managed. Now, in this animation and in this slide that I'm presenting says, yes, the device has to be AD joined and Azure Active Directory joined. That is correct for your existing devices, which are currently managed by, which is currently is domain joined. Yes, you have to have the devices hybrid Azure AD joined to go into co-managed state. But if there are new devices, you can just have them Azure AD joined and still be co-managed. Again, the point that I'm trying to make is it is the management part when we talk about co-management. As long as the device is managed by ConfigMgr and Intune at the same time, the device would be considered co-management regardless of the identity state of the device.
Now, one thing to bring up in that scenario, if you're doing the cloud only, is a CMG or cloud management gateway required to still manage that via ConfigMgr?
Now, CMG is not at all required for co-management. Now, the only thing that CMG does is extends the management, physical management vicinity of ConfigMgr and takes it across internet. That's what it does. But from the co-management perspective, CMG is not required. Does it give additional value or benefit? Yes, it does. Is it a requirement? The answer is no. It is not a requirement.
Yeah.
So 2 things. Thanks, Jake, for bringing that up. One is, device doesn't have to be hybrid Azure AD joined, especially for new devices, right? Device can be Azure AD joined only and still be co-managed. Second, a CMG is not required to deploy co-management. Okay. Adam, did you have a question?
No, I think you just kind of clarified it. It's the identity clarification there. It's the device is joined to AD or Azure AD, and the hybrid it's joined to both. But then in both scenarios, you have to still manage the device identity, the device itself, and so you're managing it either with ConfigMgr or with Intune or with co-management. With both together. So it's the same. So co-management is kind of like hybrid management. But I'm glad we didn't go with hybrid management because we just need another hybrid word out there, right?
And add some more confusion. Yeah.
Okay. So this is another slide that I talk about. And so when a device is co-managed, what exactly does it really mean, right? So I'm going to talk about some immediate value that organizations get as soon as they enable co-management on their existing infrastructure config manager. That's what Microsoft leads with, saying, hey, you do not have to change any of your processes right now, but if you take your config manager and attach it to Intune and co-manage your devices, you're going to get extra capabilities. Again, you currently get 10 capabilities with your config manager solution. That's fine, and you're going to get 3 extra capabilities, and that will be 13. Just taking random numbers, for example. That's one step. The second step is we talk about the workloads, right? And there are 7 workloads, as you can see. There are 2 app-related workload, and there are 5 policy workloads. So that's the second step of co-management, when organizations can cherry pick these workloads and decide to either keep it with config manager or move it gradually to Intune. Now, again, they do not have to do that. Co-management, just enabling co-management is going to give them extra capabilities, just going to add additional capabilities to their existing solution. It's only if they find that there are workloads that they can move into Intune to cloud and save time, save money. That's what they can choose to do it. Now, I'll give you an example. So I was presenting co-management to one of the banks here in Australia, and I was speaking to them and said, hey, look, co-management is going to give you these capabilities, and you do these processes, and when I help you and once you enable co-management, you can take a device and wipe it and take any of the Windows 10 devices and wipe it if when a user leaves the organization or the device is stolen, which you currently cannot do it with config manager. Even if you deploy CMG, yes, you can deploy policies and scripts remotely, but you still can't just right click and say, I want to wipe this device. And that's when their eye opened. This is, hey, the management said, can we not do it today? I said, no, config manager does not give you that capability. So that's what I'm talking about. So there are immediate values that you get with taking your config manager capability, config manager environment, and attaching it to Intune. And at a later stage, you can think about moving the workload. So it doesn't have to be about workloads. Co-management is not just about workloads. It's additional value that you get right as soon as you enable co-management.
And Ravi, I'd like to, another example here because of I've talked about this several times on the channel. So we are in the process of doing this now, migrating to Intune from on-prem. And we've had co-management enabled for probably 2 years now, but we just ticked the box to say enable co-management. And the immediate value is all of our devices are in Intune and give us those functions that are available within Intune. So we get all the cloud management pieces available. We haven't moved any of the workloads. We can still do all these other. We can do the sync things, and you'll demo. I'm sure you'll demo through those things. So I don't want to, spoil that. But so we get that immediate value, but it's giving us time to now work through. So like our immediate focus is working on policies. So we're trying to migrate all of our group policies, or replace or rationalize our group policy settings and config into Intune, so that we can move that workload. But what's great, what I love about it is that there are things that we can't move. Like some of the group policies just aren't going to work, like group policy preferences or some other legacy things that we still require. Great, we can kill off all the stuff that can move, but then we can still get both. We can get group policy and we can get Intune policy, all from
no group policy.
All on our Adam, shut your face, Steve.
I'm with Steve on this one for once.
It's a process. It's a migration. We are getting there, and so it lets us take baby steps with the ultimate end goal of no group policies. But there's an interim need here where, sorry, business says we still need these things, and so we can't get away from them right now. But we can get 90% there, so let's do it. And I love it.
Yeah, that's correct. That's correct. So the wiping part that Intune capability gives without changing is one thing. And Adam, like you said, the other thing that I bring up with customer in the discussion with customer is conditional access. I say, there is DCM designed. Just shows how long I've been working with ConfigMgr. There are compliance policy settings that you can create and mark a device compliant or non-compliant in ConfigMgr, but the ConfigMgr does not have just built-in bridge a connection with the cloud Microsoft solutions like Office 365, SharePoint, and other ones, right? And with conditional access that you can get after you enable with co-management, you can. Yes, you get these extra capabilities, but also without moving the workloads, you can start enabling conditional access and prompt for two-factor authentication, or only allow the access if the device is in a specific location. So those kind of things. And then, yes, there are workloads. And Adam, like you said, it can be a gradual move. So we're going to talk about this. Okay, so one thing, if you're a customer organization, you're currently sitting in ConfigMgr and you want to move to co-management, you want to know how exactly, am I ready for co-management? So this just gives you, if you're ready or not ready for co-management. You have to have Azure Active Directory. I just want to bring up that Intune trusts Azure Active Directory. Intune does not trust on-prem AD. So you have to have Azure Active Directory. You have to ensure that the users are synced up into to your Azure Active Directory. Without that, it's not going to work. You also have to ensure that the users have the licenses. Now, on that, I do want to also say there are two kinds of licenses. I'm not going to go deep into licenses because that's a very complicated topic, and it could be very different for one organization to completely different from other organizations, just because the way agreement work between organizations and Microsoft. But in general, there are user licenses and device licenses for most organizations. If they have ConfigMgr CAL license, the devices can be enrolled into Intune without any Intune license. Okay, I would just say that it's only for Windows devices. If they have ConfigMgr CAL license, Windows devices can be enrolled into Intune for co-management only, without any additional licenses, Intune licenses. Okay, it's all very well documented everywhere. Yeah. So that's another thing. There's Azure Active Directory. Make sure the users are synced. There are licenses if you do need to, and then there is Azure Active Directory specific setting that is auto-enrollment. You have to have enabled. You have to make sure that's enabled. From ConfigMgr side, it's super simple. You pretty much all the organizations should be way above 17.10 version of Config Manager. Onboard to AAD, it's a setup that you need to do. We're going to talk about that when we do live demos. And then back to Jake's point, do I need a CMG? This is where it is. It's optional. You can set up internet-facing client, which is Cloud Management Gateway, but you don't have to have it. From Intune's perspective,
so when we get to the demo piece, I'd like to revisit that and discuss limitations if you choose not to have the CMG as we get there. So,
yes, Adam, that would be very nice. Bring up as many questions because there's still it's not a new topic. Be it code management or CMG is not a new topic anymore. They are being there for some time, but it's still I get questions. There's still confusion. Hey,
sure.
What if I don't enable CMG? What's going to happen? What will I lose on Intune side? All the organizations are hybrid. It's a very old concept. It's an old slide, so not going to talk about. But all the Intune tenants are standalone only, and licenses are there has to be Intune license if required. Windows client, you have to have a 1709 build of Windows 10 or above. So that's easy. So once that's done, when you've checked the boxes, which are pretty much simple ones, what exactly do you need? So there's one thing I didn't talk about. Set up hybrid Azure AD. That's where I see some organizations are not ready, right? I'm going to talk about this, but your existing domain joined clients need to be hybrid Azure AD joined. And that ties back to something that I said earlier, that Intune trusts Azure Active Directory. It does not trust your on-prem AD. What it means is when you enable co-management on devices, right, that's when device needs to go and speak to Intune and say, hey, it all happens at the back end. User doesn't do anything. It's all silent. So you enable the policy in ConfigMgr. ConfigMgr sends the policy to the devices, not the users, devices. And device gets a policy and says, okay, now I'm going to go ahead and enroll myself to Intune. And this is the information of the Intune tenant. It says, okay, device reaches out to Intune silently at the back end, and Intune says, okay, you want to enroll it into this tenant. That's fine. I trust Azure Active Directory. Can you give me a token from Azure Active Directory? If Azure Active Directory can give you a token, I will allow you to enroll it. And that's when the device takes a redirection and says, I want to go to Azure Active Directory and says, I need a token. Now, if a device is hybrid Azure AD joined, there is a trust relation between Azure Active Directory and the device. The device gets a token, and which is presented back to Intune, and boom, silently Intune enrollment happens. No reboot is required. But if a device is not hybrid Azure AD joined, obviously the device cannot get a token from Azure Active Directory, and the Intune enrollment will fail. Okay, so it used to. Microsoft made some changes. So the changes was the change was that a device would reach out to Intune and then go to be able to not present the token and fail for enrollment. Now think about that scenario. So if let's say there are 100,000 devices, it's a large organization, 100,000 devices, somebody goes ahead and enables co-management without enabling hybrid Azure AD join. What it means is these 100,000 devices are going to go to Intune and fail enrollment, and the way it is designed is it's going to keep on trying every 15 minutes. It's going to really hit Intune tenant hard.
Yay! Right? I don't see any problems with that at all.
And you're going to see a lot of red. You'll see a lot of red in your graphs and Config Manager for compliance on that.
You know what the best thing about that, though, is? I'm not getting all the alerts on my Config Manager server.
Yes, you're not. So that's a very bad design, which Microsoft does realize it pretty early on in testing, and then it was changed. What was changed was that the client, there were extra logics added to the client. What it means is, once the ConfigMgr server sends policy to the device, and device says, okay, I'm going to go ahead and enroll into Intune. But before that, let me check if the prerequisites are met. Am I hybrid Azure AD joined, or am I Azure AD joined? Can I get a token from Azure Active Directory? Only if I can get a token from Azure Active Directory, I would even try to reach to Intune. If I cannot get a token from Azure Active Directory, I would not even try. So what's going to happen is you can go ahead and very well enable co-management on 100,000 devices. All the 100,000 devices will get the policy, but they will never try to hit and reach Intune because it is going to fail. So yay!
Yeah.
Right? How good design.
No DDoS. Sorry.
Correct.
Yeah, DDoS for Intune of 100,000 devices trying to send a message every 15 minutes. I couldn't see any problems right there at all with the service that's based in the cloud.
No, nothing at all.
I wonder if that actually happened.
Yeah.
May get a call. Hey, you know, I noticed that you set this, but you didn't do this. So I'll interject as well. I'm going to I'll see if we can put this link in the description at this marker. But we covered how to set up Azure AD Connect in a previous video. So that's basically what you're going to do. You're going to set up Azure AD Connect, a couple other little pieces, and should be good to go.
Cool. Good. So I hope that clears up the why you need to set up hybrid Azure AD join, or device needs to be at least Azure AD join. Okay, cool. So once
for
it's all
existing devices, correct, Ravi?
That's only for existing devices. If you have new devices, I would suggest them to only do Azure AD join. You do not need hybrid Azure AD join.
Yeah, because then what happens is from that side, Intune registers it, and then you can get a package sent out to the client for the trust, correct?
Correct.
Perfect. Just wanting to put that clarification for everybody to 100% confirm hybrid AD is not a mandatory requirement. You can run it with just AAD.
Correct. Yeah, thanks. That was a very important point, Steve. So
not a problem at all.
Yeah. So if you have met all the prerequisites, how do you really enable it? It's very simple. The first thing that I want to bring up is you do not need to set up any other server. There's no extra additional infrastructure requirement, right? So you don't have to go and talk to the infrastructure team, have extra server, or from the network perspective as well, you don't have to go and speak to your network team and say I need to open extra ports. None of those are required. It's only the outbound ports that I need to go, and they all need to be the network. The connections are going back to Azure Active Directory and Intune Tenant, so it should be simple. Not knowing ports required.
Just out of interest, for organizations that have limited internet connection from their ConfigMgr server outbound, what ports would we be looking at? Is it just 443 to a set list of IP addresses or host names?
That is correct. There's only there are some 80 as well, but mostly 443, and they all are to Azure Active Directory and managed on Microsoft.com.
Yeah, and we'll add a link below for everybody that needs that.
Cool. So you go into the administration console, administration workspace in ConfigMgr console, go to cloud services, pick the cloud management. Either you right click on the cloud management, co-management that you can see in the screenshot, or on the left and top, you're going to see on the visit, you can say co-management create. Once you do that, you see a visit, and this is what enables co-management. Now, I do want to bring up another thing. There are two sides of enabling co-management. There's one on the server side, there's another on the client side. This is the server side. You start the visit, which is traditional Microsoft pages, next, and put in the information. So the first thing it's going to ask you is to sign in. So when you sign in, this is where it goes and speaks to Azure Active Directory and then goes back to Intune. Now, I do want to bring up some experiences. The first thing, you need to log in with okay, I'm going to go into technical details, not just what's in the document now. Okay.
Perfect. No. So, that's what we want this channel. This is the interesting stuff.
So, in all my testing, okay, all right. So probably about 8 to 10 months or 12 months ago, if you would go back and look at the history of the documentation, like Microsoft Docs, and you look at the co-management docs, the docs, if you still somewhere have it, said that you need to be an Intune administrator. It did not say you need to be a global administrator to be able to enable co-management. Okay.
Well, you'd need
So-
to be a global admin because it registers an application into AAD.
Okay.
Correct? Sorry to steal your thunder.
Thunder. So it used to be that you only need to be an Intune administrator. And when you enable co-management, it used to only enable co-management. We didn't have tenant attached back then. We did not need an application. If we did not need an application, we do not need to create an Azure AD application. We do not need to be global admin, and co-management would work just fine. So you need to be, first, Intune administrator. Second, if you are an Intune administrator, you have to have an Intune license assigned to it. That I've seen a lot of times failure. I've got customers calling me, some other peers and organizations, like my friends who were enabling co-management would directly give me a call saying, hey, it's failing. And I would just ask them, do you have an Intune license assigned to the account? And a lot of times they wouldn't.
On your admin account, because why would you need an Intune license on your admin account other than maybe you want to do MFA, maybe you want PIM, maybe you want to do device management or conditional access. Yes.
Okay, so that was the document what used to say. Now, today, the wizard that I'm talking about does two things. It not only enables co-management, but also enables tenant attach. Now, tenant attach actually needs an application registered in the Azure Active Directory. Now, the only account that can register an application is a global administrator. So, because from Microsoft perspective, they are just two parts of the same solution, cloud attach. They updated the document and said that the account needs to be a global administrator. Now, so if you are using a global administrator, another thing is you probably do not need an Intune license anymore. So,
that's changed. That's interesting.
So, if you use an Intune, if you use a global administrator, you can log in and manage Intune without any Intune licenses. But if you are anything else other than global administrator, like if you want to create an Intune administrator account, even for the user to be able to log into the portal and manage it, they still need an Intune license. But a global administrator does not need an Intune license, or any license for that matter. So again, you do need a global admin now if you're enabling co-management and tenant attached at the same time. And I would just go with what the document says. Yes, you do need to be a global administrator. Okay, so that's on the server side. You go next, and we're going to try and do this live as well.
It's about 8 clicks, if I remember right.
Just 4
Very
clicks.
So here's the thing, an interesting story, another one. So I was helping one of the customers here in Sydney. They're based in Sydney. They're very large education customers, and they wanted to enable it. And then the document, the blog from Microsoft said that it only needs 4 clicks, right? It's about, the customer counted it. It was about 21 clicks, but it was literally counted. 26, yeah, it could be. I could be wrong.
I know.
But it was definitely,
at MMS 2019, we counted and it was about 8. So we obviously were counting different things, I guess.
Yeah,
I think though it's just the way you count it, right? Just right-clicking is a click, then clicking on co-management is a click, then signing is another click, putting in password.
The console.
I think it's the wizard that's 8 clicks. But
yes. Okay.
Yeah.
I think you just count the main clicks. You know.
Yeah.
Not the secondary clicks. Yeah.
See, the trick is what you do is you turn on problem step recorder and let it decide what a click is, and go from there.
Yeah. Okay, cool. So it's super simple to enable co-management on the server side. There are not many requirements. You literally just run this visit, sign in with the right accounts, and go next. And we're going to do this demo. That's the easy part. Now, the second part is, like I said, that client has to be enrolled into Intune as well to be able to be considered as co-management. So there are 2 parts that you can sync. There could be existing devices. So if you have, again, 100,000 devices, if you're a large organization, you have to think about how to take those devices and be co-managed, but also there are new devices. So for the existing devices, this is where you're going to start. ConfigMgr agent already installed, AD domain join, the first one, because of the reasons that we talked, because of the flow, how it works. The device has to be hybrid Azure AD join. Existing devices only, back to Stephen's points. It's not new devices. And then you enable co-management, and from ConfigMgr, again, we're going to do a demo. It sends policies, device gets enrolled into Intune, and this is the state that it comes into. Now, for modern provisioning, you start with autopilot. You don't have to start with today task sequence and Pixie boot. Just start with autopilot. The device goes in.
No task sequences.
One more thing, I want to correct the slide here. Now, you don't have to be Azure. Sorry,
I was going to say you have AD domain join for modern provisioning. I'm like, are you doing hybrid AD join during autopilot?
No. So I actually created this for one of the other customers, and they had the requirement of hybrid Azure AD join. So I said, okay, you don't need that. Please do AAD join if at all possible, and it would be possible if you tested it for a lot of customers for a lot of cases. But you could end up with the same ConfigMgr and Intune. Yep, Stephen.
Quick one, Ravi, just to go down that rabbit hole.
Mm-hmm.
Given your experiences that you've had with customers and organizations, what are the typical reasons why customers can't go AAD join only?
Now, it's because they think they can't. That's what.
Oh no, I'm talking
it's a misunderstanding.
I understand that the misconceptions, but is there any technical reasons why? Like, for me, when I have that conversation, my conversation goes along the lines of, do you have applications that need device level authentication? If you don't need device level authentication for any of your applications, you don't need hybrid AD join. But is there anything else we should be having that conversation with customers about when we have that conversation of getting rid of hybrid AD?
So there are basically two. So one is what you said, and I'm actually working with a very large airline customer here in Australia. And from their perspective, they have too many apps that currently does LDAP query through Azure, on-prem AD join. And I said, for most part, they should work. They should work. And they were like, okay, just a second. Oops, right, pressed the wrong button.
It's okay. No, you're still there.
Yeah, cool. They have too many apps that does machine level authentication to on-prem AD and does LDAP query. So, okay, that's one reason, exactly what you said. And I said still tested. They're working and testing on those applications. Another is the security reason. They believe that the group policies that they have created and had tested a long time ago, which provided them with the security, they want to still apply those settings via group policy, which shouldn't be the case. But apart from that, from my testing, my working with organizations, all the authentication, user level authentication just works seamlessly. Just having the user account synced into Azure Active Directory, you don't have to do device write back or password write back, any of those.
Nice.
Yeah, cool.
That's awesome.
So how exactly do you do that? This is what you would get after the co-management is enabled on the ConfigMgr side. So you don't have to, again, do a big bang and enroll 100,000 devices. You can very well create a collection of 50 devices of all the IT users, 100 devices of IT users, and only auto-enroll to these devices. This is what this is going to do. It's going to create a baseline, ConfigMgr baseline, and send it to these devices. Now, there is just one thing I want to bring up, another thing that I've found. So the large customer that I was talking about, where I was working with, they're based in Sydney, we enabled it, and we enabled it only auto-enrollment for a subset of devices, probably about 40 or so. And I got a call very next day that they actually have 700,000 devices altogether, that all of those devices, 700,000 devices, have received this co-management baseline. And they really, really freaked out and said, hey, hang on, it's fine. There are two baselines that would be created once you enable co-management, once you run the visit. One would be called pilot, and one would be called prod. Now, prod by default is disabled as long as you configure this as to be pilot, right? The prod is deployed to every customer, is deployed to every device, but is in the disabled state. The other one, which is the pilot auto-enroll, will get deployed in the enable state to only 40 devices. So please do not freak out if you see production co-management setting deployed to all the devices would be in the disabled state. Another thing that I want to bring it up here is these baselines, the configuration baselines that would be created are hidden on the console. Yes, you can go into to SQL database, and if you want to really see these baselines, you can see those baselines, but these are hidden and you cannot see it on the console. Once these baselines get created, again, back to the point, right? There are 100,000 devices. Customer is happy with initial 50, 100, 1,000 device testing. They want to do it for 100,000. If they enable the co-management from pilot, they drop down and say, all, the production is going to get enabled and going to roll out to rest of the 99,000 devices. And we do not want the 99,000 devices to enable or hit the tenant at the same time. So what's done at the back end?
It's not my server that I'm going to kill.
Yeah, it's going to be Microsoft's tenant. But you would kill it. You would kill it. At least the customer that I was working with, 700,000, we would definitely see an impact in the tenant. Microsoft would definitely see it. Okay, so what exactly happens? The baseline runs and creates a scheduled task on the task scheduler, which runs and enrolls the device, but it is already randomized. So it's randomized in the sense that in the next 24 hours, it's going to run. So even if you enable it for 100,000 devices, it's going to be fine. Try to do a phased approach, but if you have to do it, that's still going to be fine.
So okay, hang on. I just want to understand. We have applications from the 1920s.
Okay, so this is about troubleshooting.
It's the event log IDs, Steve. Come on, man.
I know, but it's funny.
Yeah, so I do have applications, or Microsoft actually create applications from 1920s. So this is what once you enable, this is, I get question, how do I monitor this? We can't talk about ConfigMgr without talking about logs. What is the log which I monitor it? And I said, yes, there are logs. There's actually a log called co-management handler.log, which is going to give you details. But the better way is Intune itself, troubleshooting and monitoring of Intune. Intune does not have a physical log that it creates for the MDM agent. Yes, there are other physical logs that it's created in some directories for app installation, but the Intune MDM agent functionalities, the operation goes into event viewer under application. I'll share that to you. And this gives you how you can troubleshoot it. 90s is 90, 91, 92, 97, 98. These are enrollment successful or failure. So if you're troubleshooting enrollment, just filter it for in 90s. If you want to do app installation troubleshooting, look for 90, 20, 28. So those 200s and 400s are just a normal operation of policy sync and other ones. So this is what it was. Yes, Jake, it is event viewer, but okay. So behind the scenes, what happens? I've already talked about. I've already talked about the randomization. Talked about the pilot and production baselines. This is just for information on where exactly does the information go in the WMI and registry, and the log that you're going to use and the event viewer location that you're going to need to troubleshoot and monitor information. So once it happens, what does the user see? User doesn't see anything. There's no reboot, there's no extra agent installation, there's no interruption, there's no user notification. However, if a user goes into the account and says, this is again a screenshot from one of the Ignite sessions that says the device would be joined and there would be an info button. Once there is an info button, what happens on the cloud console? So they log in to the cloud console, admin logs in and sees the devices that are co-managed. And once they click on any of the co-managed devices, yes, you get to see extra information. You can retire the device, you can wipe the device. What it means is the capability that ConfigMgr doesn't give you of saying, I want to retire, which is the wipe company data. I want to entirely reset just with a 2 clicks, reset yes, and then do it. You can see the ConfigMgr health agent. So every 24 hours, MDM agent is going to go and check if the config manager agent is healthy. It's going to take that and put that information in the Intune console. So you start getting these capabilities without making any of the process changes in config co-management side or your.
Now, just one point about those the wipe and reset and all those buttons. So, a restart. The idea here is that if you're using those, you're hopefully also using autopilot for modern provisioning, because otherwise, if you hit wipe on a co-managed device, it just ends up in the user's hands, sitting at the Windows UBI screen.
Great for stolen
which is
devices.
awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then it's ready to be re-provisioned Now, you don't. I say you should be using autopilot. That's the simplest way. But it's still going to be a corporate device, and so technically the user could, if they have an Intune license, log in and log in with their business credentials at UBI and have it join back into the business network.
So
but
what you're saying,
be careful there.
Adam, this is a good way to move from being hybrid AD join to AAD joined.
Yeah, it is.
Just a few finger slips.
Whoops! Hey, help desk guys. Do you like
Accidentally.
clicking buttons? Here, have fun.
Oh no, a PowerShell script. I just did that to every machine in the environment. Yeah.
Randomly.
Yeah.
So just basically, don't go clicking these buttons unless you have a plan for what happens afterwards.
And don't just hit the delete button if the computer still exists, because it causes issues with your hybrid identity if it's a hybrid joined, and or it causes issues with AAD, and it takes about 2 days for you to realize that you don't have a token.
Correct.
So,
From experience.
with sending down that command too, how does it get sent down to that device? Is it via IME, the Intune management extension, or how does it actually get down to the device?
So the Intune management extension is only used for app level actions. If you want to deploy an app, if you want to update an app, and that's when the Intune management extension happens. Another thing is Intune management extension is designed to come back and communicate with the Intune every 1 hour, which is separate to the agent itself. So what it means is if when a Windows as an operating system gets installed, it has an MDM agent built into it. That's not Intune management extension, but that's scheduled, if once enrolled, scheduled to come back to Intune and communicate every 8 hours. Only and only if you deploy a PowerShell script or an application, Intune would go ahead and deploy Intune management extension, and then a management extension will pull the policy every 1 hour. Now, these policies would use a Windows push notification service. Push notification service. So you click on wipe, it goes to push notification service, push notification reaches out to device, then device says, hey, there is something new for me, and comes back to Intune and says, no, you need to wipe, like run a reset or any of it. So it's pretty quick. I would say for most part, in my lab, I've seen the actions coming out to the device within a minute. Less than a minute. In some cases, a couple of minutes, but it has never been 5 minutes. And I don't go to accounts and go to settings and run a sync. No, I don't need to do any of it. So it's separate to management extension. Okay. Good to keep on going?
Yeah, man.
Yeah, cool. So client workloads. Now, before I actually start talking about client workloads, I think we've been spending a lot of time on deck, right? That's actually
Yay, demos.
some demos in.
All right. Updates.
Oh no. No, you can't have computers without updates.
Okay, cool. So I've got ConfigMgr. This is my ConfigMgr environment. I go into administration. The first thing I want to show you is the co-management. So this is where co-management is. If the environment is not already co-managed, this is where you right-click and do co-management. Let's see if you do get time. I think it wouldn't be, just for fun, wouldn't be a bad idea to do a count. How many click does it take at the end of the video to enable co-management?
Put the comments in below how many clicks it takes.
Oh yeah, good.
Yeah, and put next to that how many licks it takes to get to the Tootsie Roll center of a Tootsie Pop.
Okay, cool. So as you can see in my lab, it's already enabled. I go into Co-Management, go to Properties. This is where I see the settings that I have already enabled. Now, it always takes...
Quick one, Ravi. When we've gone in and enabled it while you're opening up Properties, when we've gone through the whole process, enable it and everything like that, does it take time once we hit the enable and finish the wizard before you can actually start using the co-management environment?
Now, the only time, so you can start using co-management environment right away. You don't have to wait. There's cool. You can literally just give probably 30 seconds or a minute to for logs process, but literally there's no delay. However, just bear in mind, the only time you can think about workloads or anything else that you can think of is when the devices are enrolled into Intune, which can take some time.
Yep.
So you run the visit, you decide if it's going to be all pilot or none, and the devices in this pilot, in my case, pilot collection needs to go back and hit Intune and get enrolled. Only then the changes would take effect. What it means is you can take a workload and you can say, I want to move the workload from ConfigMgr to pilot or Intune. Yes, you can do that, but the only time a device would know about it is when they are enrolled into Intune. So I would say the console is ready right away, but are the devices ready? No, just give them a day's time.
Also, another thing to point out while you're on the screen, if you get to the screen and all you've done is set up co-management and you have not set up a cloud management gateway, you will not see the items in that lower box.
Oh, yes, that's very good. The setting is just the outcome of this, the options that you chose in the wizard. Once it is enabled, then you can come up, go to Properties. By default, the workloads will be like this, and that's what I recommend when you enable it. Don't go ahead and change the workloads. Just keep them in there. Make sure the widget is finished properly. There's no issues, and you can always come back and change the workloads, which is going to be a later stage anyway. I also recommend to create these collections, pre-create these collections before even running the wizard. So call them compliance policies, co-management compliance policies, pilot, and so forth and so on. And then have a pilot collection ready as well. So this is what is going to create those baselines that I was talking about. Now, those baselines are created. But if I go into asset and compliance and go into compliance policies and look for baselines, I wouldn't see those baselines. They are hidden. Or even if they are visible, they're going to be read-only. What it means is if you're going to go into properties, it's taking much, much longer than I would expect for some reason. But yeah, they're going to be grayed out and you can't see it. So let me click out of it. And my console is frozen. I'll close it out and come back and let's try this one more time.
See, that would never happen if you're just doing Intune.
Correct. That is correct. That's correct. Yeah. And I also have to shut down my machine every night because it's hosted in Azure, which you would never have to do if it is Intune. It's going to run every time at 24/7.
That sounds expensive.
Yeah. Talking about expensive, cloud is something that never stops, always running, and never stops billing as well.
Yeah. Huh?
Yeah.
And if you've ever had to go and pay for an E5 license, we understand.
Okay. Cool. So it did work when I closed and opened it. Good. So I can go into Configuration Manager baseline, and I do not see a baseline that says co-management production or pilot. And it is something else that I've created, but no, it's no hidden nothing. If I go into the configuration item as well, there are no items. But if I go into SQL, I can bring it up. It's going to be too much just for the sake of fun, but probably not the way. What I want to say is, yes, the things happen at the back end after you enable run through the wizard and create it, and they are there. Now, let's have a look at the device. I actually provisioned a device just for a demo, this demo for today's session. And Okay, yeah, so that's the demo, and you can see the device name is Windows 10-domain join to DJ2. I just kept it. If I go into a control panel, I see ConfigMgr client is already installed and it's using certificate. It is not co-managed, right? It's currently intranet.
Oh, and so just to point that out while you're there, so you mentioned this earlier. That first page shows what you're showing here as well. So you get the co-management settings prod, and the client says co-management capabilities 1, but it's disabled. So that's expected behavior for every device in your enterprise the moment you enable co-management, or within 24 hours of enabling co-management, right?
That is correct. And this is exactly what you see on the screen is what my customer was freaked out about, saying, hey, you said no setting is going to go to the production, but I see every device has this prod setting enabled. It's ConfigMgr setting prod, and that's as expected. While we're here, this is a desktop analytics because I have desktop analytics enabled. If you ever see M365A settings, that's because you have desktop analytics enabled. But that's something else. What I'm going to do, I'm going to take that machine, Win10 DJ2, find it on the console. They're going to asset and compliance, device collection, all systems. And I should have Win10 DJ2. Okay. Now, I can say that this device is active, logged in. If I say co-management, it should say no. So you can see this device is not co-managed. ConfigMgr console does show you the information. If I go back into administration, go into cloud, you're going to see that is enabled for a co-management pilot collection, and device is not part of the co-management pilot collection. What we're going to do is we're going to add the device Win10-DJ2 to this pilot collection, which is not properties. Sorry, go into asset and compliance, go into device collections, cloud collections. I think it's over here. Probably not. Co-management. There it is. Right there. Yeah. So if I open this up, I would not see Win10 DJ2, which is not as expected. So I'm going to say right click, or actually I click, add, select item, existing device collection. Oh, no. I'm doing it below.
Add resources.
Yeah.
Or do it from the actual device itself.
Yeah. So I was actually thinking of doing.
How long have you been using this?
Yeah, Rabbit, correct.
Pressure. There's no pressure at all.
Look below. Add.
That's fine.
Oh, are you doing it the other way? Okay, yeah, that's fine.
This time, yeah. So, okay. So, co-management pilot. I see 8 devices. Say okay, and it sees it's a refresh and should say 9 very soon. So yes, okay, there it is. Shows us 9. Now what it means is it's going to get the policies. Now let's play with ConfigMgr at this time. So pretty sure you guys have already seen this many times. So it's a machine level policy. If there is no policy, I should have showed it. It would have been a good demo. The last time machine pulled the policy, there was 0 policy assignments. As you can see, 0 Delta policies. And normally there are 3 lines of codes in the log. There's 3 lines of entry in the log. But this time when I'm going to say pull machine policy, you're going to see that it actually has new policies. The configuration tab, which does not have the auto-enrollment setting baseline, will have an auto-enrollment setting baseline. Say run, and see there's a few lines of logs, which itself says it did receive something new. So actually it received 3 new assignments. As you can see, gives you the assignment ID and the version number. We're not going to go into details, but tells you that it's downloading and it's applying. And so the log itself just shows that it definitely received something from ConfigMgr MP. If I go back in here, just to be on the safer side, and open ConfigMgr Cloud Applet, come up here, and you can see there is in pilot auto enroll.
Nice.
So this is what just read. Yep, Stephen.
And if we go to the general tab, I see that it's now 255 instead of 1.
Okay, correct. Now, the reason why it is 255 is, okay, we're going into detail.
Asking.
Yeah, we're going into detail.
Deep. It's just calling out that this has now changed.
There is a great blog by Ben Whitmore that we can link you to. I believe he's got probably the most comprehensive, where he lays out what number will show up there depending on which workloads you have enabled. So it's pretty comprehensive.
So I used to have that in my slide, but I thought that's just showing off.
I think a lot of folks like to see it. Though. I think it's value add. Even and I don't. Maybe the docs even have it published. If they don't, maybe we should ask Aaron to throw that up.
Or you do a pull request and add it yourself.
Or ask Aaron to do it.
Hi, Aaron.
It's a little less labor intensive that way.
Yeah. So since we're talking about it, every workload has a number in the database, and again, you can see the data. You can see those number assignment to the workload in the database. What it means is when you take the slider and move it over, it increases the number and adds the number and shows you. 255 is the maximum. What it literally means is every workload is moved from Intune to ConfigMgr, which is in my lab. And that's why you see 255. You're not going to see, you could see something else. You could see 64. You could see 128. There are different numbers. And based on the workload that you have enabled, they're going to add it up and show up.
Nice.
Okay. So one more thing is quickly, it not only did that, it's also went ahead and co-managed. Now, it did it super quick because this device was co-managed early on. There's no other devices which are waiting for co-managed. So in my lab, it's much, much quicker. But when you enable it on much bigger device, large number, you're going to see throttling. Okay, so where do you see it? There are two places you would go. And first is co-management handler.log. You're going to see that it's going to show you information on before, when it got the policies, it says co-management is disabled but expected to be enabled. You're going to see that pretty much every time. This is what comes up the first time it receives the policy. First times it gets the baseline, it says it has received the policy, which means it's expected to be enabled, but currently it's disabled. So it's information, and says then eventually comes up here and says enrolling device with the AAD device credential. So you can see it is device credential, not the user credential. So it first uses device credential. If it fails, then it can go to user credential as well. And then MDM enrollment succeed. So that's good. Now, the same information would also be available in the event viewer. So if you go into event viewer, and let me go back to Steve. Steve, do you remember what event ID would we see, or at least the range?
Is the 90s.
Ah, good.
90s were the enrollment, 200s and 400s were status and general operational, and 1920s for applications.
Or we could just say the 90s were the grunge era and the 20s were the flappers. Is that? Was it 20s or
swing?
30s for the? Yeah.
20s was swing.
There you go.
Okay. So I'll bring up something else, right? This is how I remembered it. There are just too many directories in here. And initially it's like, I don't know, where is Intune?
It's the longest string.
It's the longest string.
It's
always the longest string.
Without reading exactly as I'm saying.
Some jerk engineer is going to screw this up for us one day and make one longer.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, cool. So you can see there are 300, 400 something. Like I said, I normally don't look at it when I'm doing something, but I always come back and look for 90 something. So it should have, let me have a look at the time. So there are some new events as well already. Okay, so time-based should be a couple of minutes ago. So it's still 24 and 24. I think the reason why we see too many information is because it's every time the device gets enrolled, the first 6 minutes or so, it runs things every 2 minutes. And that's why you just keep on seeing Now you see so many entries, but once it's settled down,
Wow.
you see those many. And come on, maybe somewhere. So you can see 19 something already. So that's application installation. So this is
Yay!
installing something as well. Should be right over here. So it says auto-enrollment.
Very cool.
This is the registration, 7275. So this also says succeeded. So it's 97 is failure. Yeah, this is what it says. It's doing the enrollment. And then 72 says, okay, it succeeded. After that, it started doing lots of. Yeah,
so I assume, sorry, Ravi, just to take you on a little bit of a tangent. This is standard for any Intune enrollment. You'd see that 72, 75, 90, 91 messages, correct? Even if it's not using the co-management connection.
You're right. This has got nothing to do with co-management. It is initiated from ConfigMgr, so it is going to be co-management. This is just the normal Intune process, how it works.
Awesome.
So you can say that once it is enrolled, it started doing lots of 200s and 400s, right? It's just continuously pulls those policies and applies those policies, similar to policy agent. The first time you install ConfigMgr agent on a device, you see heaps and heaps of information in policy agent.log and just pulling those policies, like sometimes hundreds of policies. And once it is done, you start seeing 91. You have to remember this, but remember the range. And once you remember the range, these are just like the names of the logs. So when I talk about ConfigMgr, I know every log, what it does, right? Just been working with it for so long, but yes, I do forget how to add a machine to collection sometimes. but I do remember the name of the log. Similarly, the way I see event viewers, the ranges are the name of the log. So once you know what you're trying to find, just remember the range that you're going to look for, and it's going to be super easy. It's not going to be overwhelming for you to seize those many. You just seize these as the names of the logs, and you know what information to expect on it, and that's how I do it. Okay, cool. So this says that it is doing a lot of activity that's expected. Two reasons. One is I've got all the workloads moved over to Intune, so that all the policies that I have in Intune is just going to start coming onto this device, and it's going to stay busy. And the device, which if I go into accounts this time, go into access worker school, there is an info button. The only time you will see info button over here is when the device is enrolled into Intune. If it is not, you would see just a disconnect button. Once you click on info button, the settings and the accounts, you do see the policies that it is getting from Intune. So this is all the policies. And again, remember why I'm getting
a lot of policies.
A lot of policies because pretty much every workload is moved into Intune.
Nice.
Okay, cool. And I can do sync and I can create report. I'm not going to go into that. So that's how you enable co-management. That's how you add the device to co-management collection and what happens at the back end. So an idea. Now, once it is done, what exactly would you want to do? Because you already started getting the benefits of co-management, as in you can retire, wipe, and do reboot and rename from the Intune console now. But what's next? So let's go back to the deck. Come on, go back.
I believe scripts get included in that as well. Is that correct?
Yes, scripts gets included as well. Now, I say to a lot of customers, then they say, okay, we want to move workloads. They ask me, which workload should I move?
All of them.
Yeah, but they're like, everything is working for me. Which workload should I move? So
Windows updates.
Yes, you're right. So I worked with one of the mining customers. They're based in Perth. They started with co-management. The very next thing, which was very logical as well, that they adopted was the autopilot. Not having to create and manage those Vim images and gold images. They're very happy. They're autopilot. They're only using autopilot to provision all the devices.
Yeah.
And then they came back to me. What next? They're super excited. They're really like customers, the architect over there is like, I want to test more. He's always hungry, which is great. Like, I want to do more. I said, okay, let's do the
cloud only.
No, that was too much. I wish it was that simple. But he wanted to Windows Update for business policy. So we worked through and gradually moved from on-prem software update point and patching every month, creating update groups, sending the policies, sending update groups to devices, downloading binaries, and to sending it to distribution points. It was taking a fair amount of time, labor, to manage those patches. They moved Windows Update to Intune. The other thing that they are doing is client apps. Now, I do want to talk about client apps now. It's a different kind of workload. Now, if you see, Windows Update is either ConfigMgr or Intune, right? Once you move the slider over from ConfigMgr, which is on the left, to Intune on the right, even if you create a software update group policy and send it to the device is just going to reject it. Says, do not accept Windows Update policy from ConfigMgr anymore. If you think about it, there are a lot of organizations with hundreds of applications in ConfigMgr, and then it's just not easy for them to take all these applications and repackage them into Intune unless
just hundreds of them.
I know. Okay, let's listen from Adam. How many apps do you got?
1,500 to 2,000.
Yes, but how many of them are the literally like just different versions of Adobe that you haven't removed from your environment?
No, these are no. It's more like 6,000 if you go the flavors and versions of things.
Take Mercedes.
More apps than you have actual employees,
Enough to have a full-time person packaging applications.
Yeah.
His name is Adam.
You do not want me packaging apps. Here's a CD. Enjoy.
Yeah. So, it's just not easy and practical for a lot of organizations to take the client apps and say, I'm going to move the slider over from Intune and I'm going to manage the apps from Intune. That's not possible. So Microsoft did hear that, and the way they design client apps is they said, you can move the slider over to Intune. What it's only going to do is open the door of MDM agent to get the application. However, it's not going to close ConfigMgr agent itself from getting the application. Yes. So all the new application, you can create it in Intune and you can deploy it from Intune. The existing application, you can just continue to deploy from ConfigMgr. And then there was another question that says, okay, I do have the same application now in Intune and ConfigMgr because some of the devices are co-managed, the others are not co-managed. It says, no, that's completely fine. You can try to deploy the same app from ConfigMgr and Intune. The way it's going to work, the first agent that pulls the policy, either the management extension or the ConfigMgr agent, is going to accept the policy and say, hey, I need to install, let's say, Adobe. And says, okay, that's fine. It's not installed based on the detection logic and installed successfully. The second agent, let's say MDM agent in this case, says, hi, I need to install Adobe, which is exactly the same, and still says, I'll try to install it, but the detection logic says it's already installed. So it only sends a state message back to Intune saying that the app is installed.
All I hear there is literally like a game between the Intune team and the ConfigMgr team where they're not talking to each other to see who can get the applications installed on more devices.
Yeah, that would be good. That's a good one. We should probably do that. That would be good. Yeah, cool. And not only that, when you move the application, so you can take a gradual approach. You have the staging collection for every workload and only choose to test a workload on a subset of devices, which could be very different from the testing of another workload. So you can test Windows Update for policies for some machine, and on completely another machine, you can test the endpoint protection policies.
So, Ravi, the thing I've done with all of mine is, if you go back to the slide, so I've slid all of my sliders to pilot, and then I've created a corresponding collection for each of the pilot workloads, and then I've created another collection that's an all, and so then I've included the all collection into each of those the workload collections, so that if I want to give a user, if I want to assign all the policies to a device, I put it in the all, and it gets added to each of the sub collections, or I can individually add a device into each of the workload collections as needed. So if I just want to pilot this user with Windows Update, but I want to do this user with all, I can, it gives me the granularity to do all of those things while still not having to keep moving the sliders back and forth and everything. So works great.
Yep, that's one good way of doing it, definitely, Adam. And I'm not sure if you have noticed it. So if you do that, if you take a pilot collection and you gradually keep on increasing, or you take a pilot collection and you add more than 1,000 devices to pilot collection, it gives you a warning. A lot of times it thinks that you cannot have more than 1,000 devices in pilot collection. That's not true. Anytime you add more than 1,000 devices to any of the workloads pilot collection, it tells you, saying, hey, you're adding more than 1,000 devices to a pilot collection. You really sure this is a pilot collection?
Is this really still a pilot?
Yeah. So
Are you just deploying this to production? One computer at a time.
At a time, yeah. Cool.
Yeah.
So Microsoft has demonstrated. Sorry, you had something else, Adam?
Yeah, just one additional thing back to the client apps workload. So one of the great features, I believe, what is now 2010 and forward in Config Manager, is a client settings. Maybe it's 2006. There's a client settings option that allows you to choose which software center wins. So if you deploy Company Portal to your Config Manager managed devices, the Company Portal natively will now automatically show all of your Config Manager apps in the Company Portal and all of your Intune apps, which is amazing. Yeah. But then you also now have the extra benefit of being able to say that you want the Software Center or Company Portal to win as the preferred provider. And so we were testing the other day, and so if I got a toast notification that says you've got a new app to install, and I've got Company Portal set as my primary user portal, and I click on the toast notification, it'll pop open whichever one you've selected as your primary portal. It doesn't get rid of Software Center. It still exists and it still functions. But as you move, like our plan is, once we add the application to Intune and we've got the workload slid, then we will remove the app from Config Manager. And so hopefully not have double dip and confuse users there. But if you're keeping them in both places for whatever reason, great. You can still use Software Center, or you can see everything all up in Company Portal as well.
Some of the verbiage has changed on actual applications as well. If you go to make an application, you used to have that show it as a featured application in Software Center. The verbiage has now changed to Company Portal.
Oh, wow, that's neat.
Yeah, so you'll notice that if you go do that.
Correct. So that's a very good point, Adam. And I've been reached out by customers I work with to, hey, how do I make Company Portal? I read somewhere, heard somewhere Company Portal can now be the primary end user portal. And this is how you do it. It's on the screen. So go into the administration, client agent settings, create a new client agent settings. If you would prefer to do it on a smaller collection, go into Software Center, and then this gives you a drop-down menu to say either you want to do it Company Portal or Software Center. So yeah.
You could even deploy that custom client settings policy to your pilot collection for your client apps.
Correct. It's a very good way of doing it.
Adam's very excited by this technology.
Yeah. Okay.
Who isn't? This is amazing. It's great.
No, I'm excited. It's awesome.
Yeah, you're excited. Whatever.
So is he excited about Intune in general, or he's just excited that Config Manager can be attached to Intune now?
I think Adam's excited. Adam's excited on the Config Manager and Intune. I'm excited on the Intune part.
Now, one other thing with that too, Company Portal isn't a requirement to do that, if I recall too. It's only if you for available assignments that you need that. Is that correct?
Yes, you're right. Yeah.
Does it automatically install it, or do I still need to grab it from the store?
Yes, need to grab it. they will go directly without having company portal installed. We'll grab it from the store, right?
Yep, cool.
So, Adam, you should have called me earlier before. Waited too long to come. I wasn't aware. You're super excited about this.
Well, see, unlike Steve, I still have to live in this world, and so I'm going to keep using all the available tools until I don't have to be in this world. And all of these things are making my
just
life
rebuild onto Intune
easier.
only.
How is Adam going to use the admin service?
What fantasy
if he doesn't have
world do you live
co-management?
in, Stephen, that you don't understand? This is a complex move here. It's a big
And
deal.
just do it overnight. What could go wrong? You know.
Exactly.
Just
Yeah.
do it all. Just do it all
Lift
and
and
move all the
shift,
workloads
you
to
know.
Intune.
Just randomly, like, pick a day and just slide everything across, and then also set up your autopilot profile for AAD join, and then move forward. Done.
Let's do
I
it on
suggest
YouTube.
a Friday afternoon.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I reckon we could do a really good video on that one, Adam.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
How fast can
Okay.
Adam get fired?
Okay, so this is again a Microsoft slide that has been presented multiple times in multiple occasions. This just says gives an animated view of how the workload transition works, right? So this is co-management before the workload transition. So you can think about any policy except for client workload. A policy goes from ConfigMgr agent and goes successfully because the default workload is owned by ConfigMgr, and you create a similar policy, let's say device config, resource access, or any policy. And once it comes, MDM agent says, I can't accept it because, it's coming through MDM, but wouldn't be accepted because the authority is with ConfigMgr. So you go to the console and you take the slider and you move over to Intune. Now, just bear in mind, you haven't deleted the policy in ConfigMgr console. That's completely fine. The policy that was rejected by Windows 10 is now accepted from MDM agent. However, the same policy from ConfigMgr agent is rejected. So again, what I want to talk about is, like, once you move the slider, you don't really have to worry about deleting the policies. The agent takes care of it. All the logic of which authority owns the workload is all in WMI. There are ways I could show you to go and dig into WMI and see where exactly the workload resides. That's for troubleshooting and sometimes for finding. You can do that. Okay, so this is what it is. Actually, I haven't removed it. Hey,
there you go. Excellent.
So there are workload values. So if you're going to add from 1 to 128, it's going to be 255, and that's the reason in my lab you can see 255. Depending on the workload that you have to move from left to right, you just add the number up, and it's going to show you that. And not only that, I've done a small demo as well, so you can see I've added from 1 to 64, and the capability comes as 239.
Oh, and I'll tell you, I'm
else.
going to link to another policy or another blog from Cody Mathis, works for Patch My PC over on the SCCMF 12 Twice blog. He wrote a nice PowerShell script to convert the number to the appropriate workloads. So if you just see the number, you can just run it through the script and magically get spit out the number. That's kind of fun.
That's very good. I think that's really good. But there are easy ways to do that as well.
Okay.
Definitely a fun way of doing
Sorry,
it.
Cody.
Sorry, Cody. We're not going to link it then. Forget it.
So once the devices are co-managed, again, go into the console, you can see that there's a method. There's a method in function in WMI that you can use to see which workload is owned by what as well. So you can just create a simple PowerShell script too and run this method in WMI, and it tells you exactly which workloads are owned on that device, right? For whatever reason, the policy didn't get applied, the policy didn't reach because there was an issue with the collection membership query or something else. This is just for troubleshooting. So you connect to this, you open the class and you run the method, and it gives you the value of it. That's another way of doing it. So yes, that's one way of doing it, just checking the value. Another way is to really look into, like, if you want to do it on the client, you can just get these directly from WMI. Again, we're talking about ConfigMgr. There are logs of these. There are different logs for each agent workload, and that tells you the workload being owned by Intune or ConfigMgr. This is, again, what I was saying, every 24 hours, MDM agent is also going to check the health of the ConfigMgr agent and send the report back up to Intune, so you can see if the client is healthy or not. And then these information are also sent, a lot of information is also sent to ConfigMgr. So you go into the monitoring, go into co-management, it tells you the number of devices that are co-managed, number of eligible devices. So, okay, I do want to talk about this. So number of eligible devices are the devices where the co-management is enabled. So in my case, I had 6 devices, and scheduled devices, this is where I have enabled, and the policy has reached to 5 devices, as in the task scheduler has been, a task has been created in the task scheduler. Enrollment initiated is, yes, the device was hybrid Azure joined, so it initiated it and successfully enrolled into Intune. So this shows that. And at the bottom, you can see the workload, how many devices have which workload enabled. Let's do that in the console. Let's see, what do I see in my lab? So if I go into monitoring, I actually look at 2 places, I should say. So I look at cloud management. Cloud management talks about more about the identity side, the operating system side. So let's have a look at it first. So you can see Azure AD. So it says these are the Azure AD, how many users, Azure AD users, hybrid Azure AD users, on-prem users. So you can say all the devices are either hybrid Azure AD join or on AD only, Azure AD only. I don't have any on-prem. Azure AD devices. So it's, let me bring it down. Azure AD devices. So it gives you an idea. This is where to start with. Like if you have devices which are not hybrid Azure AD join, you can see that. If there are issues, you're going to see that. The CMG as well, you're going to see that. Co-management, it tells you the number of devices which are eligible or not eligible. So I don't have any Windows 7. I used to have, just to show this, I used to have some Windows 7 devices in here, which it's been now removed because it's not supported anymore by Microsoft. Windows 10, which is lower than 1709, so these are not eligible too, and then these are the eligible. So in my lab, I've got 11 devices, all of them are eligible. Out of all those eligible devices, you can see I've enabled co-management on 9, and enrollment initiated on 9.8. So this is probably just hasn't updated, because you remember that device that I've just enrolled, this is what that device is. So it used to be 8.
If you double click on these, can you drill through? I know sometimes the reports allow you to do that, and sometimes they don't.
So not on all. So as you saw, okay, I probably think I've been too quick. So over here, you can see that there are the thumbnails, right? So you can click on this. So you want to see how many successful Azure AD join devices. So you can click that and you can see these other devices. So it creates a temporary query. This is not a report. It's going to go away once you close and open the console. So you can go into the other ones too. There's just one quirk, I would say. Gotcha. So I expect all the thumbnails to work. Like if there is a thumbnail, so there are 2 ways, right? It doesn't come up with the thumbnail, so I know it's not clickable, right? I can't just click on these. But if there is a thumbnail, I can click on this and it can show me. That doesn't happen every time. It's, from what I've heard, it's known within Microsoft, and they're going to work.
Known within everyone. We all know. You just start clicking.
Yeah. So if you, like, for an example, cloud management, I'm clicking and it doesn't come up. So it's not you, it's everyone. Okay, if you do feel that. So there's thumbnail, but you do get information on the ConfigMgr console.
Cool.
Okay. Some of the common failures. Let's say SCCM full admin, need permission in all scopes. That is the user who's logged into the ConfigMgr console has to be full admin and have to have permission in all scopes. You can be a full admin and not have a permission in all scopes. That's possible. That's going to create a failure. I have seen proxy and network configuration causing issue and blocking the authentication process. Just bear in mind, ConfigMgr console uses IE configuration at the back end. So whatever proxy you have configured for IE is going to be used by ConfigMgr console when you right click and run through the visit. Intune license for admin. If you're an Intune admin, again, this is you need to use global admin now, and Intune administrator role. You need to be at least Intune administrator role, at least for co-management only, a global administrator for co-management and tenant attached. Now that brings me to the very, very end of what I wanted to talk about, but I do want to talk about two things. One that Jake brought up and Adam brought up again, that we said we're going to talk about that, but I did not. We skipped through it. And another thing that I want to do is do a count of, for fun, how many clicks does it take to enable co-management? And I also want to do a demo of how easy it is to enable co-management, just on the server side at least. Okay, so Jake, you said about CMG being enabled for Azure AD joined devices, right?
Yeah, I believe if you have an Azure AD joined device only, so not hybrid joined, not domain joined at all. If you want to use the config manager side of things still, you need a CMG. That's what I've always been led to believe.
That shouldn't be the case. Okay, so let's talk about how things work at the back end. So when a device is an hybrid Azure AD joined, okay. For Intune, the source of authority truth is Azure Active Directory. For on-prem, it is AD joined. Sorry, AD. So if you think in a way, you're right, that if a device is Azure AD joined, if it reaches out to ConfigMgr, ConfigMgr, similar to Intune, needs a token, a Kerberos token. ConfigMgr relies on Kerberos token from an authority it trusts, and it's going to be on-prem AD. So if you're using PKI for MP and other things, you don't need to be, because then PKI becomes a trusted authority for MP.
Well, I think the situation comes into your Azure AD device would need to be on the VPN.
Need to have that. Yeah,
it needs to have it would have to have line of sight to your on-premises infrastructure to function. If it's right. So I guess the clarification is an internet only Azure AD joined device needs to CMG. CMG.
Otherwise, if it has that view to on-prem, it doesn't.
That makes complete sense, and it is 100% correct, because once a device is an internet, it can only speak to CMG to be able to install ConfigMgr client or be able to get the policies. So correct, you do need internet-only clients need CMG for complete co-management. Otherwise, they will never receive any kind of policies and never send information back to ConfigMgr.
And that's actually the important part is regardless of hybrid or AD only or Azure AD only, it's internet devices need CMG to do co-management.
Correct. That's one thing. There was who's going to do the count?
It depends on where we start counting.
Oh yeah. So I hope.
Well, Brad's not there anymore. He's nobody's promoting 4 clicks anymore.
Correct. But for just fun, let's do that. So.
This will fire up a problem step recorder, because it will take a snap time to do a click.
Yeah.
It saves everybody counting.
Yeah, but I'll let Steve count. Okay.
Don't trust this guy to count.
Don't trust this guy. Actually, we should ask either Jake or Adam.
I'll count up here.
All right. Cool. So.
Well, to get a true count, you got to close the console.
Oh, see, I was doing it when you're actually in the wizard.
See,
but again, where do you start the counting is the thing.
Okay. So
1, 2. Does right click count as a click?
No, I counted it at this window, but hey, we'll go with the 2, so it's probably going to be 10.
3.
Now you could technically tab right here.
We could have done that all along and saved all the clicks.
Okay.
We
Now,
better hit enter after the password here too.
okay. So what I'm also doing is, okay, let me see if I remember the password. Yep, good. There is next. So in the next one, we're going to talk about tenant attach. So we're not going to count this as a click, right? But I've disabled tenant attach and automatic enable. I do.
And those technically did not exist at the time when this was originally.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I'm going to do it for pilot collection. Is that considered a click?
If it's on by default, isn't it?
No, it's, by default it is this. So you definitely don't want all.
All right, we'll go ahead and count that as one.
Yeah.
I was bold and I did all in mine.
So browse. Okay. So next. Workloads. I want to keep it default. Next. I don't want to change anything now because I haven't changed workloads. Next. And next. And complete. It's 10.
11 with the complete, but yeah.
With the complete. Okay, cool. I don't know how many audiences got it right, but it actually takes 11 clicks if you count it the way Jake did, we did, to enable co-management on the console.
I mean, this is great stuff. I mean, I think our audience, I know, has been asking for quite a while, and we just keep telling them no for this type of content. Steve, as you've seen us argue over this, he seems to think that no one is in a state where they might need to, migrate from on-prem to the cloud. It's just cloud only, and his head is also in that same cloud. Apparently. So,
yeah.
It was 11 clicks. You saw.
Cover this stuff is great. So, I mean, I'm very excited about it. Hopefully, other folks will benefit from digging through this if they haven't already started down this path in their environments. And we definitely want to have you back on to cover tenant attached, and because these are all the keys to helping you get your on-premises infrastructure into a more cloud-centric state. Like we've said at the beginning, you don't have to fully migrate. You don't have to move all the way there, contrary to what Steve keeps saying. But
yes, you do.
It is absolutely possible to fully move to the cloud, and these tools will help you get there. Well, thanks again, Ravi, for stopping by, and we'd definitely love to have you back on. So, guys, you got anything else?
No, I don't think so.
All right. Oh. Excellent. Well, we're going to call this one done, and we will see you the next time.
Cool. Bye, everyone. Hope you find this useful.